There's a lot of people struggling with anxiety. And the only way to be able to overcome it is to truly understand it. Okay, so I want to help you understand exactly what it is and how you can break free. Okay, how do we do this? So to remove the fuel source, we have to be able to master mindfulness. It's why I put it in the healer's user manual. Mindfulness is one of the most powerful healing tools I could ever offer any of you. It is the opposite of overthinking. So much of our suffering, so much of our stress and anxiety that is causing our nervous system to become dysregulated and stay dysregulated comes from our thinking. Mindfulness is the antidote to anxiety. It's the ability to observe without adding to, right? Watching something without being it. We're separating ourselves from the cycle. Noticing without becoming entangled in. We can observe these thoughts and this fear-based thinking. If we can observe these things, now we are separate from, we are no longer in them. We are no longer our thoughts. And when we can notice our thinking without judgment, without just being present and noticing, now we have removed the fuel source for anxiety. And yes, this is simple, and no, it's not easy. I'll never tell you it's easy, because it's not. Because so much of this cycle is happening automatically. We have thousands of thoughts every day. It's happening quickly. And so again, it takes so much moment-to-moment self-awareness to go, whoa, okay, I'm having some crazy fear-based thinking, some catastrophic thought. If I continue to think this way, it's going to cause more alarm in my body, which is just going to cause more fear-based thinking. Is if you're observing that loop and you can stop adding to the anxiety by thinking and having these fear-based thoughts, just understanding that there's probably not a whole lot to worry about. Most of why you're thinking this way is because you're stuck in alarm. Your body's job is to look for threats. And so thinking is going to be fear-based. It's going to be equal to the state of the dysregulated physiology. If you practice mindfulness and you're able to master it, anxiety and thought loops will be a thing of the past. It is truly one of the most effective ways to break free from anxiety and to remove the fuel source, to be able to go from thinking, contributing to anxiety and our suffering, to being able to observe without having those fear-based thoughts, without adding to the cycle. It is so powerful. If we can observe who we're being, then it's no longer this automatic program that's just taking us for a ride and taking us to a destination we don't want to be at. We get to observe the program, then we can change it. We get to remove the fuel source, then we can dissolve it. Okay, and that's why we practice mindfulness. Revisit it if you haven't. It's in the healer's user manual. It is something you must master if you want to overcome anxiety. Thinking is what fuels all anxiety. If you can get out of the head and observe the pattern and stop the thinking, it can be really helpful to get out of the head and into the body. What's going on in the body? Anytime I feel anxious, rather than trying to think my way out of a problem that we think we can solve in our mind, but we can't because it's stemming from the body. So that's when I get out of my head, knowing that thinking is just going to fuel all of this, and into my body. What's going on in my body? Sensing it. Wow. I can feel my heart beating. I can feel that tension, and just being with it, not making it wrong, not trying to make it go away. All of that's going to fuel it. Just being mindful, present with, rather than adding to. Okay, the second thing we have to do, we have to rebalance our physiology, because as long as our physiology is stuck in this state of alarm, the brain is just going to be receiving these messages, and its job is to basically have fear-based thoughts. So what causes our body to be stuck in this state of alarm is a lifetime of stress and traumas. It alters our physiology. It alters how our cells communicate. It changes our brain waves. It alters our heart rate, our blood pressure. It changes our physiology. Chronic stress, trauma, these things over time lead to this altered state and this alarm in the body. The one thing that has the biggest impact and is like the control system for our physiology is our breath. It is the master controller of the nervous system. And I can tell you that most of you here, most of you that I work with, are breathing every single day in a way that is contributing to this dysregulated state. Whether it's too fast, too much, you're over breathing, right? We talked about we're supposed to breathe about 6 breaths in a minute. And most of us are more like 20 to 30 breaths in a minute. We're over breathing. We're breathing too shallow. The wrong areas of our body are moving when we're breathing. We have improper mechanics. We're seeing the chest and shoulders rise rather than the diaphragm expand, which activates the vagus nerve, which tones the vagus nerve, bringing the body, the most powerful nerve in the body that brings us back into rest and repair. Some of us have poor posture. We're hunched. We have this roundedness through the back. Well, when we have that, we're not able to expand our diaphragm. And if we can't do that, every breath is an opportunity to activate that vagus nerve to get the body into a state of rest and repair. Every single breath we take either moves the body toward rest and repair or toward fight or flight. The quality, what moves, what doesn't, how often we do it, how deep we do it, how fast we do it. How we breathe signals to our body we're either safe or under threat. And this is why breath is one of the most effective tools for healing the nervous system and rebalancing altered physiology in the body and restoring a sense of calm to the nervous system. Okay, that's why we're practicing box breathing in here. The reason so many of us end up with these dysfunctional breathing patterns, most of us come into the world with pretty good mechanics and patterns. If you watch a baby breathe, it's pretty darn good. When we experience stress and trauma in our lives, this alters the way we breathe. If you guys ever, you have a speech or you have something you have to do and you're breathing, you just feel like you're breathing from here up. It's not deep, it's not slow, it's rapid, it's shallow, maybe you're holding your breath. We, as a result of this stress in our life, develop these dysfunctional patterns. And what happens is it alters our physiology, which causes more stress and more dysfunctional breathing patterns. So we get stuck in this loop of poor breathing, not understanding that literally every breath we're taking is contributing to the state of alarm in our body. And what happens is over time, we end up with what we call CO2 intolerance. And this is where the body really struggles to be able to tolerate high levels of carbon dioxide, which results in symptoms of more stress and anxiety. CO2 intolerance causes anxiety because elevated levels of carbon dioxide in the brain, when we get these elevated levels, it acts as an alarm. It's an alarm chemical, essentially. So CO2 builds up, the brain perceives it as danger, triggering fight or flight. So when we have the CO2 intolerance, which a lot of us do, we'll uncover this here in a minute, the body becomes less able to tolerate rising CO2 levels before the alarm goes off. And this makes even just a little change or increase in CO2 trigger the stress response, which is what a lot of you are feeling when you're doing the box breathing and holding your breath. It's like, oh, I feel a little panically. I feel breathless. That's a sign you have low CO2 tolerance. CO2, again, causes, it's an alarm system. It's an alarm chemical. The brain perceives it as, oh, there's a threat. And so even just a little increase is going to cause that heightened anxiety. How do we know if we have it? How do we know if this is playing a role in our own anxiety? Let's find out. So one of the most effective ways to determine if you have CO2 intolerance and how much this is playing into the state of your nervous system is by measuring what we call the Bolt score. Okay, and we're going to do that here. I'm going to do it for you guys. I've got my phone here so I can time. And essentially, what you're going to do is you're going to just breathe normally, as you would. I'm going to pull up my clock here. And when I say go, we're going to have everybody breathe in and breathe out and exhale. And at the bottom of the exhale, you're going to plug your nose and hold your breath. And the first desire to breathe in, your very first wanting to inhale, that right there is when you're going to stop counting. And I'll count out loud for you once I can find my timer here. And that's what your Bolt score is. Okay, so it's that first desire to breathe in. Let me get a timer here. Just go ahead and breathe normally. This is something you can do later as well. And you want to do it, probably, 5-10 times before you can take the average of each of those scores. It's best done in the morning. You're going to have a better Bolt score in the morning before the stress of the day. So you can do it multiple times throughout the day and then take the average of that number. Okay, so go ahead and just start breathing normally. Nice deep breaths, expanding the belly. Nice long exhale. And we're going to take one last deep inhale. And I'm going to have everybody exhale. Go ahead and exhale all of the air out. And then plug your nose at the bottom. And hold. And you can watch this timer. So we're at 3 seconds, 4 seconds. And as soon as you have a desire to breathe in, your first desire, you can take note of the number. Good, we're at 20 seconds. And I'll go to about 35 because my sense is there's not going to be anyone here with a Bolt score bigger than 35. 34, 35. Okay, I'm going to have everyone type into the chat. Let's see how you guys did. It's hard when we're doing it in this way, but we'll get an idea here. 11, some 25s, 32, really good. 15, 10, 18, 10, 14, 23, 18, 10, some 30s, some 35s, maybe even longer. A 4, 7, 12, 13, 16, 18, a lot in the teens. A couple of you in the 20s, a couple of you in the 30s. I'm impressed by a couple of you guys. So just make sure, and again, it's something that you can practice. You can take an average over time to get a more accurate reading. I'm impressed with some of you. I'm going to help you guys decipher the results. So depending on where you were, a Bolt score below 10 is a really good sign, a strong indication of low CO2 intolerance. And all that means is that your brain is intolerant to CO2, and that is absolutely playing into your dysregulated physiology and your anxiety. Okay, so this is why when we do the box breathing, we're doing the mini breath holds, because what that does is it gives our brain a small dose of that rising CO2, and it makes our brain more tolerant. So we can overcome this intolerance. Okay, so 10 seconds, really strong indication of low CO2. Typically, the lower the Bolt score, the more anxious the person. It's so interesting working with so many people over the years with anxiety. I've never met someone with anxiety and a high Bolt score. Like it's essentially the same thing, okay? If you have a Bolt score between 10 and 20, this is moderate CO2 intolerance, so you're just kind of somewhere there in the middle. And then a Bolt score of 20 to 25, 30, somewhere in there, your nervous system is right now in somewhat of a regulated state. So if you were up in the 20s and 30s, you might feel good right now. You might feel like your body is entered that parasympathetic state, and that's a really good sign. So a Bolt score is just a fun way to kind of check in. How is my nervous system doing? If you've experienced, a lot of stress, that CO2 intolerance will start to show up. And so one of the ways that we combat that and help to balance the physiology is we practice those mini breath holds. And that's why box breathing is one of my favorite tools for balancing physiology and for calming the nervous system, because if we have this CO2 intolerance, we're going to be sending that alarm to our brain without even knowing it. You're just going to be getting these, not understanding why you feel like you're under a state of threat. And a huge part of it is the way that you're breathing. I can tell you right now, it's nearly impossible to have a healthy nervous system and have funky breathing patterns. So that's why in the program we go over the importance of making sure when you're breathing that you're breathing through your nose. When we breathe through the nose, it activates the parasympathetic nervous system. Through the mouth is more sympathetic. Really important to be breathing through your nose, especially at night. You want to make sure that your shoulders and chest aren't right. If you see a lot of movement up here, that's also going to be activating the fight or flight nervous system. You want to breathe low and slow down into the belly. So the rib cage, that's where the diaphragm sits, right below it is able to expand. And with each breath, you're toning that vagus nerve. So you can think of your breath as an opportunity every single time you breathe to move your body into a state of calm. And if you're breathing dysfunctionally, too fast, too shallow, with the wrong mechanics, you're moving your body in the opposite direction. That's why breathing is one of my favorite tools for healing the nervous system. It's the master controller of the nervous system. And what's really cool is that when we practice these optimal mechanics and we slow our breathing down with box breathing, right? We're maybe breathing anywhere from 5 to 8 times in a minute because we're holding. We've slowed down our breaths per minute. When we practice this enough over time, this becomes a little bit more ingrained and we do it more automatically. So hopefully this transfers to the rest of our day when we're just going about our day and we're not even thinking. If we practice good breathing patterns, hopefully we're starting to breathe a little bit better throughout the day.